He was the biggest star in the world. There was no one bigger. Not before, and maybe not since. When he sang, the world changed. Teenagers lost their minds. Parents lost their patience. Culture shifted on its axis. Every record he released went straight to the top. It was a given. Gold and platinum were just the cost of doing business. He was a force of nature, a musical hurricane that had ripped through the quiet, predictable landscape of 1950s pop music. And he made a record that was a monster hit. It sold over 1 million copies, easy. It shot up the charts in both the US and the UK. It had everything you'd want in one of his songs. Really, a driving beat, a simple, catchy idea, and his voice, that unmistakable voice, front and center. To the world, it was just another smash from the king. Another reason to buy a ticket, to turn up the radio, to scream his name. But he hated it. Not just in a casual way, not like an artist who thinks, I could have done that take a little better. He was deeply, profoundly ashamed of his performance on it. He felt it was stiff. He thought it was lifeless. He believed it was a betrayal of the very energy that had made him who he was. To him, this massive hit record was a personal failure. He heard it and he cringed. He felt like a phony. How could this be? How could the man who embodied rock and roll, who sang with such unchained raw conviction, feel like a fake on one of his most successful records? The answer isn't in the song itself. The answer is in the man. It's in the year it was recorded. It's in the room where it was recorded. It's about a world of pressure crashing down on a young man who just wanted to sing. It's a story about the difference between making music and manufacturing a product. And it's a story about a son who was about to lose his whole world. To understand why he hated this record, you have to go back to the beginning of 1958. On the surface, things could not have been better. He was 23 years old and had conquered the world. His movies, Loving You and Jailhouse Rock, were colossal successes. He wasn't just a singer anymore, he was a movie star. And he had Graceland, the sprawling Memphis mansion he'd bought for his parents. He had the pink Cadillacs, he had the adoration of millions, he was the American dream in a gold-laned suit. Musically, he was untouchable. Just a year or two earlier, he was recording in the Tiny Sun studio in Memphis. Those sessions were pure lightning in a bottle. It was just him, his guitarist Scotty Moore, and his bassist Bill Black. They were experimenting, they were having fun. They stumbled upon a sound by accident, speeding up an old blues song and turning it into something new, something dangerous. There was no pressure, there were no expectations, it was just the pure joy of creation. That joy, that spontaneity was baked into the grooves of That's All Right and Mystery Train. You could hear the freedom. By 1958, things were different. He was with RCA Victor, a major label. The sessions were bigger, more professional. They were in state-of-the-art studios in Nashville or Hollywood. There were more musicians, more producers, more executives, and there were expectations. Every song had to be a hit. Every session had to produce a product that could be sold. The wild, experimental energy of the Sundays was being replaced by the polished, reliable machinery of the music industry. He was still making incredible music, of course. Jailhouse Rock, recorded in 1957, is a masterpiece of aggression and attitude. Don't Be Cruel is a perfect pop song. He hadn't lost his magic, but the process was changing. It was becoming a job, a very well-paying, very glamorous job, but a job nonetheless. And in January 1958, as he walked into the studio to record his next single, he was carrying a weight that had nothing to do with music. The weight was a letter. It was from the United States government. It was his draft notice. Today, it's hard to imagine the scale of this event. Imagine the biggest pop star in the world, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, whoever at the absolute peak of their fame, being forced to put their career on hold for 2 years to join the army. It was seismic. For him, it was terrifying. His entire career, this thing he had built from nothing, was going to be put on ice. Would people forget him? Would the music change? Would he come back in 2 years and find that he was no longer relevant? These were real, legitimate fears. But his biggest fear wasn't about his career. It was about his mother, Gladys. He was a mama's boy in the purest, most devoted sense of the term. Gladys was his anchor, his confidante, his world. Their bond was legendarily close. He called her by pet names, they had their own private language. Everything he did for her. Buying Graceland wasn't about him having a mansion, it was about giving his mother a palace. And Gladys was not a well woman. Her health was declining, she was anxious and worried, and the thought of her son being sent thousands of miles away, possibly into harm's way, was destroying her. And he felt all of it. He was watching his mother suffer, knowing he was the cause of her worry, and knowing he would have to leave her. The stress was immense. He wasn't the cocky, swaggering king of rock and roll. He was a scared, worried son, This is the man who walked into Radio Recorder's studio in Hollywood on January 15th, 1958. He wasn't thinking about art. He wasn't thinking about changing the world. He was thinking about the army. He was thinking about his mom. And RCA was thinking about money. His label knew he was leaving. They had a 2-year gap to fill. They needed product. They needed a stockpile of songs they could release periodically to keep his name on the charts, to keep the money flowing while their cash cow was in uniform. So these recording sessions in early 1958 weren't creative explorations. They were emergency supply runs. The goal was quantity as much as quality. They had to get as much in the can as possible before he shipped out in March. The atmosphere in the studio was professional, but tense. The fun was gone. The old gang was there. Scotty Moore, Bill Black, drummer DJ Fontana, the Jordanaires on backing vocals. But the feeling was different. It was work. It was a deadline. Everyone was just going through the motions. The song they were set to record was written by 2 professional songwriters, Russell Moody and Burt Carroll. It was a solid rock and roll number. The lyrics were simple, a boy asking a girl to wear his ring around her neck as a symbol of their commitment. It was a classic teenage trope. The melody was catchy. It had a good beat. On paper, it was a perfect song for him. Should have been a slam dunk, but he couldn't connect with it. He tried. They did take after take, 31 takes to be exact. For a singer as instinctive and natural as he was, this was unusual. His best work often came in the first few takes when the energy was fresh and raw. 31 takes suggests a struggle. It suggests something isn't clicking. He was searching for a feeling that just wasn't there. Listen to the final recording. His voice is powerful. He's a professional, and he hits all the notes. He growls and sneers in all the right places. There's something missing. There's a stiffness to it. He sounds like he's pushing the energy, not embodying it. He's performing the idea of an Elvis song, rather than just singing from his gut. Compare it to Hound Dog. In Hound Dog, you can hear the joyful chaos. You can hear him smiling, almost laughing as he spits out the lyrics. He's playing with the song, bending it to his will. It's alive. Now listen to the song he recorded that day. He sounds tired. He sounds distracted. The vocal is less of a performance and more of an impersonation of himself. He's giving the people what they expect, but his heart isn't in it. The wild, rebellious spirit is replaced by a kind of strained competence. It's the sound of a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders, trying to pretend he's a carefree teenager in love. And he knew it. He felt it in his bones. This was not him. This was a product manufactured under pressure. It was a hollow echo of the real thing. He had built his entire career on authenticity, on a feeling that was so real, it scared people. And now he was in a studio, under contract, faking it. This is the source of the shame. It was the shame of an artist who felt he had become a machine. It was the shame of a man who felt his own emotional turmoil was making his work suffer. He couldn't give the song the life and joy it needed, because he had no life and joy to give at that moment. He was just a collection of worries and fears, dressed up in a rock and roll costume. The song was released in April 1958. Of course, it was a huge hit. The public didn't hear the stiffness. They didn't sense the distraction. They just heard his voice, a driving piano, and a great beat. They heard another classic. It went to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was everywhere. And for him, this was a special kind of hell. Imagine creating something you believe is substandard, something you're embarrassed by, and then watching the world celebrate it as one of your greatest achievements. Every time he heard it on the radio, it was a reminder of that day in the studio. It was a reminder of his own perceived failure. It was a validation of a performance he felt was inauthentic. His feelings about the song weren't a secret to those close to him. He would complain about it. He felt the vocal was forced, that he hadn't found the song. He felt he'd let himself down. It's telling that after he came back from the army, he very rarely, if ever, performed the song live. An artist's live setlist is often the truest reflection of the songs they connect with. The ones they love, the ones they are proud of, are the ones they want to share with an audience night after night. This one was left in the vault. It was a hit he wanted to forget. What's so fascinating about this story is what it reveals about him as an artist. It would have been easy for him to just cash the checks. He was the king. He could have released anything and it would have sold. But he cared deeply. He had an internal standard of quality, a measure of authenticity that mattered more to him than chart positions or sales figures. He knew the difference between the magic and the machine, and that hit record felt like the machine had won. It also marks a sad turning point in his career. The pressures of that 1958 session were a preview of what was to come. After the army, his career became increasingly dominated by movie soundtracks. He was often forced to record mediocre songs for mediocre films. The sessions were rushed. The material was weak. He was a professional doing a job, singing songs he had no connection to, often with a sense of resignation. The joy was gone. There were moments of brilliance, of course, especially in his 1968 comeback and his live shows in the 70s. But the carefree, spontaneous magic of the 50s was largely a thing of the past. That one-hit song, recorded under duress, was a harbinger of this change. It was the first real crack in the facade. It was the moment when the business of being Elvis started to overshadow the joy of making music. He felt that shift happen in real time during those 31 takes, and he hated it. So, when you hear the song, it's easy to get swept up in the energy. It's a fun piece of classic rock and roll. It sounds like a party. But for the man singing it, it was anything but. It was the sound of his world closing in. It was the sound of obligation. It was the sound of a worried son trying to sing a happy song. It was the hit record he was ashamed of. It was a song that, for him, was a lie. And it serves as a powerful reminder that the greatest successes, the ones the world applauds, are not always the ones that bring an artist. Sometimes they are just a painful monument to a moment when the magic wasn't there. The song was called "Wear My Ring Around Your Neck."